Thanks everyone for joining in for this Tech Talk, our November Tech Talk. I'm real happy that David agreed to do this presentation. David has been attending our Tech Talks, quite a number of them over the last bunch of months, and then I reached out and cast a line out there. Who would like to do a presentation? And David came back and said he would like to, and I said that would be great. Let's talk about a nice topic. And so David agreed to do a presentation today on ArcGIS Experience Builder widget development, a quick guide for GIS laypersons, and maybe not even so much the layperson, maybe even the well-seasoned GISer. I'd like to introduce you to David. David has been all over the world. David grew up, if I get this all right, grew up in England, did your early education in England, came over to the States, well, jumped over the pond, right? And did your PhD in New York. It looks like you did some work in New Mexico. And if I understand things right, you are currently located in Washington State. That correct, David?
Well, actually, it's funny you should say that because I'm actually in the north of England right now. I
Oh
had
my
to come home
goodness.
for something. So yes, I'm currently
Uh-huh.
7 hours ahead of you in the north of England. Yes.
Okay, well, thanks for making it. And
Oh,
now
you're fine.
here, before we even get started with your presentation, I've got a question for you, if you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
My question is, what is your favorite Bob Dylan song?
Oh, I think it has to be like a Rolling Stone. I think I'm a major Bob Dylan fan, as many of you know. Well, I don't know. I should admit this, but I've seen him 93 times, and
Uh-huh. Wow.
and I've had that song a lot, and I think that's probably my favorite. That or All Along the Watchtower, maybe
Yeah,
something like
so
that.
I learned that by reading and jumping into David's website and reading his bio, those sort of
It's
things.
very old.
I hope everyone who's connected today even knows who Bob Dylan is. And if you do know, or maybe you want to acquaint yourself with Bob Dylan, pop into the chat line what your favorite Bob Dylan song is. Mine is Subterranean Homesick Blues.
Yes, a good one. I missed that by one show. Yes, and
Yeah.
he's here in the UK right now. He was
Oh, I
in
bet.
Liverpool just a
Uh-huh.
couple of nights ago. Yeah, yeah, just down
Yeah,
the road from
very
me.
good. Well, I
Yeah.
don't want to sidetrack us, but just a little bit fun.
No,
Um,
it's great.
yeah. Okay, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, David. Go ahead, take it away with this wonderful presentation.
All right, thank you very much.
Mhm.
All right, well, thank you everybody. Good morning to you all. It's the evening here. Anyone else on the afternoon? Good afternoon to you. So
Wrapping
thank you,
this
Keith, for letting me do this. I think I do recognize some
presentation.
names on here.
Did you say something? It's
Oh,
like,
Ingrid,
oh, he's there.
we can hear you, Ingrid. Could you
I'm sorry.
turn your microphone off? Yeah. All right. Thank you. So yes, I see that Jackie Reeder is on here, and Jackie is a real star at this stuff. So maybe Jackie, that's my question, Keith. Maybe Jackie should be doing this. We'll see. But anyway, so as you can see there, I work for myself, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. And this picture that you see, depending where I am, I try to make them relevant to the situation. And that's the top of the hill, about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile from where I'm sitting, and that's the top end of the valley in which I was raised, and my mum still lives here, and I'm just around at a neighbour's house because they have good broadband. So that's where I am in the north of England right now. Very, very spectacular area. So yes, as Keith said, I for those of you who don't know me, and I think there are a few who do, I spent some time gathering degrees in various places. Ended up in the US to get a PhD. I've been doing GIS a long time. My specialty is GIS tools, processes, and supporting infrastructure. And I've been working for myself since 2012, and I started this gispd.com thing in 2014. And it's not a business, it's just simply a label for doing helpful things for people like yourselves. And over the years, I've probably over 100 people now involved in sessions and workshops and things, and a couple of full GIS professional development days as well. And so a lot of people have been involved in this, and it's just a nice thing to do. That's really what it's all about. And if you'd like to get involved, you're very welcome to do that. Just let me know. So anyway, so the purpose of the session is to provide a quick overview of ArcGIS Experience Builder widget development using a relatively simple select features example. It's an example I've used for years, and it's all you need to just get going and show the principles. And I want to provide helpful information for developers and non-developers alike. The word layperson in the title is deliberate. I am a developer, and if I just went on about the details, I would bore you to tears in absolutely no time. Hopefully I won't do that anyway, but I'm going to try not to. But the idea is that everybody here can get something out of this, and hopefully you'll follow along and learn something. That's the idea. And if you don't, let me know, and we can always go through it again afterwards, or we'll hopefully have time for questions and discussion. So first, I'm going to talk about Experience Builder Developer Edition, just quite briefly. Then I'll get into the proper meat of the presentation, which is the widget development, and then just a slide at the end with some closing considerations. So let's get right into it. Experience Builder Developer Edition. I hope everybody here has heard of Experience Builder. It's an ArcGIS online product. It's also an enterprise. It's a builder application. And just terminology-wise, the thing that you build is an experience. The Experience Builder is the program that allows you to build those experiences. That's just get that terminology straight. I've heard people say, I'm making an experience builder. Well, no, you're not. Esri made that, and you're making an experience. So it's a standalone version of Experience Builder that allows for customization in ways that you can't do online or in the enterprise versions. You download a zip file from Esri, and then you just simply extract the contents to a folder, start the application, and you can start developing and customizing to your heart's content then. And then once you've created an application with some custom functionality in it or custom themes or whatever, you can then download that. It sounds funny, really. You just bring it out of one program on your desktop into a zip file, and then you can host that. That gives you a web application just like any other that you can host wherever you like. Now, I mentioned Jackie a moment ago. Jackie did a great talk on the subject of ArcGIS Experience Builder Developer Edition in February of this year, February the 8th. And so Jackie is the expert on this, and that's why I won't, because we've already covered this earlier in the year, I won't go into any more detail on how you set up Experience Builder Developer Edition at this point. I'll just get straight into widget development. So this is the Experience Builder Developer Edition. It looks exactly like the online and the enterprise versions. You have in the center this pane, if you like, this canvas where you can bring in functionality, and on the left you have a pane with widgets in it, and so you see map, base map, gallery, coordinates. These are widgets, are little bits of functionality that work within a host program, in this case Experience Builder, and then subsequently in the experiences. And you'll see that I have a map. What I did was I just dragged from that first button there, dragged it in, and now I've got some configuration options over on the right. I choose my layer counties, or in that case, the web map rather counties, and I've got some other options for configuring this widget, okay? And this second picture here shows a select features widget. Now down in the bottom left corner there, it says custom. Well, this is a custom widget that I've created, and I can drag that in just like the map. And you'll see that these two buttons here are grayed out at this point. That'll change soon. Over on the right is select features, and so it says select a map widget. And so I choose the map. So I'm associating the map with the widget there, or excuse me a minute, I'm just going to move something because something is distracting. If you've got videos on, could you possibly turn it off so it's not distracting? Thank you. And then you've got a select feature layer option, and I've chosen counties. So that's not the web map this time. This is a layer within the web map. All right, and those are the orange boundaries there. Okay. Now, here is the application running. So this is the experience as opposed to the builder. This is the experience. And you can see that the select features widget there has two buttons. It has the select features and the clear selection that are both now highlighted. They're both in blue. And that's because the widget and the map now are talking to each other. They know, and the widget is ready to use. And if you click on the select features button, you can drag a rectangle, just standard GIS functionality here, pretty basic. And you drag a rectangle and you select some features, okay? So the point here is that you don't need a complicated example to show this stuff. This is very fundamental, basic GIS that I'm showing here. So the core technology for what I'm doing here, this is just standard web development when you think about it, right? So we have HTML to provide the structure. We have cascading style sheets, CSS, to control the look of the page or the widget or the application or whatever. And we have JavaScript to provide interactivity. So that's the technology that's been around for, well, since the early 90s or even before, you know, for internal reasons. And so we're all used to that. Now, what's different about working with Experience Builder as opposed to, say, Web App Builder and the technology of the past is that we're working with components. We have component-based development. And so what we do is we create element-like objects that are referred to as components that look a bit like HTML and can be used in a very similar way. So here is an HTML table element that I hope most of you have seen. And then below it is a custom component, which has the name there, my component, or one word, and the syntax you can see is just like the one above, the table there. And so that's a custom component that I've created and I can use in a very similar way to existing HTML elements. So a web application is a hierarchy of components, and then widgets are components that sit within the hierarchy and may be composed of other components. That's the way it works. So here's an example. This is an Experience Builder component, and this is really all there is to it. It's created using React. It's technology that's used for a lot of Esri applications now, and that's why they all look very, very similar. And this is a basic widget. So there's 3 parts to this. The first part, this import here, just like Python or any other programming language, we're bringing in the functionality that we need to get something done, and in this case, create a component. And then this function here, this is a standard JavaScript function, right? And it's called widget, and it's got some argument there called props, and we'll come back to what that colon's all about later. And then it returns something. This is a return statement. And what it's returning here, this might look odd if you haven't seen this before. This is HTML and it's mixed right into the JavaScript. Okay, this is called JavaScript XML, JSX, and this is a new thing, a relatively new thing that's incredibly powerful. And then that last bit there says, okay, when the system reads this file, the application reads this file, it should treat widget as the primary component here, because there may be others in here which are used by widget. And so in that hierarchy that I told you about, but widget is the primary one, that's what that says. So we also need, for our widget, the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript, and that's Esri's primary JavaScript library. You can go and have a look at this page here, see more about that. And if you're on the 3x version, for example, now, get off it as quickly as possible. I'll say a little bit more about that later, but move on if you can. And we also need what's called TypeScript. TypeScript is referred to as a superset of JavaScript, and it's developed by Microsoft, and it adds optional static typing and other enhancements. So it looks like JavaScript, does very similar things to Java. Well, it does everything JavaScript can do and a bit more, but it's non-standard JavaScript, and it gets converted into standard JavaScript for the purpose of running web applications. And what I mean by static typing here is this. In JavaScript, you could say let x equals 3. You could then change x to something, x to true. You can change the type of data to your heart's content, right? In TypeScript, the type there refers to the data type, and it refers to what's called strongly typing. Okay, the first case was loosely typing, but you can change the data type. In the second case, it says let x be of type number. So you're saying this variable can only hold numbers, and we assign it initial value of 3. And if you try changing x to something else, like the word something, a string, you will get a message saying you can't do that. And you find that out before you run the application. You find that during the development stage, which is very powerful. It makes your programming more robust. It makes you a better programmer and so on. So TypeScript is required for Experience Builder. It's not required for standalone JavaScript 4x applications, but it's strongly recommended. So let's now look at some code and see how this works. I'll start with a single page and built in JavaScript, and I'll just show you some mapping functionality, the select features functionality. Then what we're going to do is take that code and convert it to TypeScript, and then it'll be ready to go into the widget. And as far as the widgets go, I'll build up a little progression there from a basic widget to a select features widget UI example, and then the select features widget itself. Okay, so hopefully you'll see that progression there of how we can separate things out and initially just focus on getting the ArcGIS piece working, then we can get the TypeScript piece working, then we can start to put it into this, this shell of a widget. So let's now look at some code here. So I have over here a program called Visual Studio Code. Hopefully you can all see that. This is a folder. For the idea of a code, Visual Studio Code project is just a folder on your hard drive. And the key files to look at here, just ignore the rest of them, but index.html and then select features.js, right? The other stuff just has to do with code quality checking and that sort of thing. So here is a standard HTML web page. If you get an example file from the Esri website, you'll get this. All I've done is split out the JavaScript into a separate file. So that view div down there is a container. And then in here, this is the JavaScript code that adds a map. And at the top, it brings in functionality. This is just like the import thing that you saw before on that component example. This is the equivalent of it in just a standalone JavaScript example. And if I just scroll down here, you'll see I use this key, this long key that allows me to access Esri services. I create a map here. I create a feature layer and I add it to the map. And then I create, I've just got some arguments there that go into creating a map view. Right, and that map view you can see from ViewDiv there, it links to that container. So this is where you're setting up what goes into that container and then appears on the page. And then down here, I've got a couple of buttons. So I'm defining a button there and I'm adding it to the map view. And then I'm adding what's called a listener. So when you click on that button, something happens. In this case, select features. And that's a function call. So it's saying, go off, do your thing. So I can select features. Here's the clear button and then another handler. And then I've got all the code down here to do the selecting of the features, right? I'm not going to go into detail on any of that, but let me just show you what that looks like. I've got Brave browser here. I'm just going to move this over here. There we go. Excuse me a second. Right. If you look at this, this page here, there are the two buttons. Select features. I click on it. X appears. Click on the map once and drag. Let go. And the features will get selected. They go like that. In this case, it's just selecting counties. Click clear. And the graphics there get wiped away. So that's a page that just has the JavaScript functionality that we need, which you saw on those static slides I showed you earlier. And now we're going to see how we go from there to TypeScript. So my next example here, this is TypeScript. Now this time the structure over on the left is slightly different. If I go to the index.html page here, you'll see it's similar, but this bit down here is slightly different. Don't want to say too much more about that, but there's ViewDiv again, right? This is the container. And now if I look at the select features code, you'll see at the top, there's an immediate difference, right? Because this is a more modern way of bringing in functionality. And this is very, very much like Python or something like that, you know, where you're just saying import this from this, you know, just somewhere in the code base, right? And so, so these things here, like simple line fill symbol, feature layer, graphics layer, should hopefully be familiar to you. It's fairly standard terminology. Now, if I just scroll down here a minute, you'll see I've got this key again. You've got the map there, creating the map. But look at the difference, right? It says map there equals new map, and I've got this colon map. That's saying that this is a variable of type map. It can only hold map objects and it can't hold anything else, right? Similarly down here, map view, that's a type map view. So my program's more robust. And if I just keep going down here, I've got the buttons, and then if keep going down, this is the selection stuff, select features down here. It's pretty much identical to before, but now it's coded in TypeScript. And you'll see there that this is a TS file, right? So that's not going to be recognized by a browser. But what I can do here is I can type tsc-w, and this thing will start a process that will convert my TypeScript to JavaScript. And this is a bit unintelligible. You wouldn't want to mess with this, but this is standard JavaScript that will run in the browser, okay? So when you create TypeScript, you're not running the TypeScript directly, it's getting converted, right? So now if I go and actually look at that page there, what I got to do here is click this, first select the index and then click go live. I'm starting a little web server here and that TypeScript page pops up. And you'll see it looks exactly the same as before, works the same way. But now we've got code that's ready to go into our application. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at some widgets. So here is Experience Builder again, and you see I've got two widgets selected there. I've got the map. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in a basic widget here. This is a sort of an empty shell, and I dragged it in, parked it there, and it says it's not configured, right? This is just a label that I put in there. Over on the right, some settings. I'm going to pick counties, and now what I can do is I can save that. Now, when I run this, watch what happens. These buttons are going to start off gray, like you saw them earlier, and same with these. And this one here is going to say not configured, but then it's going to switch and say it is configured. So watch this when this opens. There you go, gray. Things, the map's still getting set up. Now the map is ready to go. The buttons say, okay, I can enable myself, and you can go. And in this case,
19.
It's sorry, somebody's got your microphone on. If you could turn that off, please. And it says here configured layer ID 0, which is the counties. Okay, so there's my widget ready to go. Now, if we actually have a quick look at that basic widget, see what's in it. Here's a structure. Don't want to explain all of that, but here's a structure. Here's a widget.tsx file. This is a TypeScript file that allows for JSX. That's the reason for the X on the end. And that's that combination of HTML and JavaScript before. So at the top here, we've got some imports, just like you saw in that TypeScript file. I'm going to go down here. Here we've got function widget. You remember from my slide? That's my widget component. Okay. In this case, there's more going on in here. I'll skip right over this state stuff here. But this is a bit of code that basically controls the setting up of the enabling of the widget when the map is available. That's what's going on there. And if I keep scrolling down, here's some CSS. This is a variable that stores some CSS information. So this is very, very clever stuff. And then return here. Remember I said it has to return a single thing. Well, there's the single thing. And in this case, it's a div. It's a front end that appears on the map. And all it's got is a label. It says if it's configured, put out that bit of text. If it's not configured, put out that bit of text, right? So basic shell of a widget there. If we then add some functionality to that to make a bit of a shell UI, if you like, this one looks very similar, right? Starts off the same. And if I go down here, the setup's the same. Now we've got a couple of buttons, right? There's the handle, we've got a couple of handlers for buttons, sorry. And if I scroll down, there's that header style CSS again. And down here, this is defining a style button. So this is defining another it's the styles really for the buttons. That's all I'm saying, more than that, I suppose. And down here, here's the return, right? Now there, you've got that standard single thing again, but this time it's got a couple of buttons in it. So if we look at the front end, there's one button, there's one button, there's the header. Those are the three things that are in there. There's the header, there's button 1, there's button 2, right? So it looks just like HTML, but we've got JavaScript mixed in there as well. And this piece at the bottom just has to do with setting up the map. Okay. And then lastly, if I just skip over to the third one here, this is now where I've put in the GIS functionality. So here I've got those import statements from my standalone page there, same exact format there. Scroll down a bit, same as in the basic and in the UI widget. Keep going down. And then this time, instead of just showing a pop-up, if I click on those, there you go. It just says, to do, right? Okay. But now we've actually put some code in there. We're accessing the select features functionality, doing the clear selection. And then this is all that code that you saw in the the TS file before, the TypeScript standalone page. I just brought it in and I've referenced it. That's all I've done here. Okay. So you can see hopefully how I've built up through these different widgets to arrive at this final one. And there's one more that I just want to show you. And this is a feature navigation widget. And this has the widget there, but it has some other, the component there called widget. And this is the primary one, of course. And then it's got some other components in there. And what this one does, I'll show you. If I go over here, drag this one in, all right, and then just move that over there a bit, make that a lot bigger, that will do. And then go and select the counties, there's the counties, save it, run it, Yeah, just give it a second. Now this one's just loaded. Now this loaded the field names from the counties layer, loaded a box with values, in this case the FIPS code, the GeoID, and then it's got these controls appeared. So I can go next like this, and I can just scroll around based on attribute values. And if I change that to something else, whatever that happens to be, pick another value. Now I'm navigating based on a different value. Okay, so that's just an example of something that uses multiple components that are talking to each other to provide a bit more of a rich capability there. So let me just go back to my slides just to wrap up here. The software that I'm using, the developer edition there, of course, I wouldn't necessarily call that software. Well, it's more of an application, if you like, that's locally installed. And then I have Visual Studio Code, as I said before. This live server extension, which is a built-in web server, was developed by this gentleman called Rick Day, very, very clever. And this ESLint extension, you didn't really see that, but that has to do with code quality checking. So I included that as well. I use a web browser, of course. I have developer tools available to me, and I have React developer tools. And if I just got just a minute here, I'll just show you something. If I open F12 here, you can see when I choose something here, those blue flashes, they indicate that I've changed something within the internal data in my widget, and the widget has redrawn itself on the screen. That's what those blue flashes mean. So if it doesn't blue flash, it hasn't had to redraw itself. It's very clever stuff, this. And so that's the React developer tools that's doing that. And then lastly, Node.js, which is basically JavaScript. It's the JavaScript piece of a browser without the browser. That's the way to think of it. And I use TypeScript there. I've got ESLint again. And then I've got this ArcGIS Maps SDK definitions file, it's called. That's what allows me to use the ArcGIS Maps SDK with TypeScript. And some resources for anyone who's interested. You can have these slides afterwards, and some closing considerations. So customizing Experience Builder is more challenging than customizing Web App Builder, as you may appreciate from what I've just shown you there, for anyone who's done that before. It's a different ball game. So anyway, as I suggested before, if you're not already doing so, start making a move from Web App Builder to Experience Builder, and also from the 3x to the 4x API. There are lots of reasons for that. And research your options. Well, primarily, by the way, the 3x API is now, or Maps SDK has now been retired. So that's a big reason right there. Research your options carefully before embarking on customization. Standard message for any of this kind of work. You know, don't just leap right into it. Make sure you've looked at all the different options. All right. Keith, that's about all I have to say. I think we're coming up to time here, but yeah, I was on time, but we started a few minutes late, if that's all right.
There are a couple of questions in the chat line.
Yes,
David, do you want to take a look at those? You want me to read?
No, I can see that. Yeah. So
you can see them.
Will that CSS override the heritability? You mean the inheritability, I guess, if there's a word there, Ian. But yeah, CSS works on, well, it's cascading, right? So if you define styles above, and then you define styles where further down, it's the lower ones that override the upper ones. And there's nothing unusual about this. It's just standard the way CSS works. Nothing unusual there. Eric, by the way, I don't have a GitHub repository. I never needed to do that, to be honest. But if you want this code, I can send it to you afterwards. I do need to get into the modern world with that. Megan asked about, are these, excuse me a minute, that just went off the top of the screen. Megan asked about, where was it? Excuse me a second, Megan, I'm just finding your question. Are these custom widgets also customizable for mobile and tablet use? Absolutely, yes. I mean, you develop them when you're, let me just go over here back to the developer edition again. Okay, when you go over here, you can change the display mode, right? So this is a tablet, and then this would be a mobile device, right? So you can, in this case, you can see my widgets don't really work very well, but I can make different versions that will operate in these different modes. So yes, the answer is definitely there. Let's see, any more in here? Yeah, did that answer your question, by the way? And same for you, Megan. Yeah.
It looks like all the questions have been addressed, David.
Yes.
Very good. And let me tell you, I don't know if this is really just for lay people.
Well,
What do you think,
I
folks? If you vote just for lay people, this is for lay people, give it a thumbs up right now. Okay, if you think it's for maybe a little bit more than lay people, how about a thumbs
yeah.
up now? No reaction either way, but I'm gonna react. There we go.
Well,
Yeah,
Keith, to be quite honest with you, I don't know if you've seen me do this layperson type talks before. Usually I have an hour. I mean, it's a bit of a stretch, I guess, doing it in a short one like this. But
absolutely. Yep.
if I took this same subject and gave it an hour, I could go into more detail on just what the basics are, and what I wanted to do here was just really communicate that progression. It's really just a logical approach, if you like, to go from, if I just find my browser again, yeah, just separate your learning. Start off learning about the JavaScript 4x API. You're going to need to know that for the GIS pieces. Then
Absolutely.
switch to the TypeScript piece, and learn about those too. And I do have a workshop on this topic that I haven't taught in a while, but I've got a full day on JavaScript. I've got a full day on TypeScript, and I'm definitely going to do more on this. I'm going to do an intro JavaScript one as well. So, if anybody's interested in learning about this stuff and you're not finding resources, let me know, and I will factor that into my workshops. And then sooner or later, I'm probably going to do one on the widget development process as well. And then, like I said, the widget piece of it, the idea there was, well, if I just go back to here a second, well, I'll go to there. There we go. I hope you could appreciate, without knowing the details, how I went from something basic that I can reuse, for any widgets, right? And then I just added some initial shell UI into it, and then I hooked up the shell UI to the other functionality.
Yeah, no, absolutely, David. It's fantastic to see the capabilities that you just uncovered just a little bit for us, which was fantastic. Lots of things that we can do. A little bit of work, sure, but customizing far beyond what you get out of the box. And you've given us that look at that, and I really, really appreciate it. That's really an excellent presentation. So thank you once again, David, and thanks everyone for attending. We are at the top of the hour, plus a couple minutes, but let's go ahead and one last call for any questions.